Well, almost by accident a few days ago, I managed to catch Donald Trump live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I was struck by how much better a candidate this is in the home stretch. Not only his demeanor, his posture, his delivery, but his messaging was absolutely superb. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your right angle on Donald Trump's political messaging, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com, to whom we are eternally grateful. Gents, you know that I've been looking at this messaging thing and talking about effective messaging. It's been my wheelhouse for quite a long time now. And so I was exceedingly pleased to see Donald Trump delivering lines that not only were good lines, they were effective lines, and they were attack lines, and they were subtle lines. And I thought I'd read a few of them to you to begin. So, Scotty, let me just start with you. I'm just going to give you four of the lines that I thought were just effective politically, and maybe we can talk about them individually or all together if you'd like. So here are some of the things that Donald Trump said on that appearance in Michigan. He's going to give a new deal for Black America. He said, "We used to make cars in Flint and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now they make cars in Mexico and you can't drink the water in Flint." He said, "Hillary makes herself rich by making America poor." And he also said, "How can Hillary manage this country when she can't even manage her emails?" Scotty, those are tight. The idea of a new deal for Black America, stealing the Democrats, basically stealing their prime, Promethean fire of, how Roosevelt saved this country after only 64 years of depression or whatever it was. That's profoundly good. What do you think about this new messaging on Donald Trump's part?
Yeah, especially that first line. And I'm not as big of a fan of, how effectively somebody attacks somebody else, but certainly those, for attack lines against Hillary Clinton, those were certainly effective. But what I like about that first line, that new deal for Black Americans, is that's moral language. I mean, he is talking about a moral question, and Republicans have this tendency to focus on, practical things, how efficient we are, how well managed we are, or whatever. But the real problem that left-wing government produces is a moral problem. It is masquerading under the banner of fairness, but in fact, it creates what they would call savage inequalities. The savage inequalities they blame on the system of capitalism, but in reality, it's the crony government setup, it's the top-down control that creates these savage inequalities. It's the inner-city schools, which are under a monopoly rule, where the young person can't escape and have an opportunity to make it, to break out. And so when Trump uses moral language like that and basically calls on Black people in the inner city, and he says in his speeches, he says, I work with many Black pastors, and he has his finger, I think, on the pulse of a lot of parents who are in these cities, who are sending their kids off every morning, hoping they don't get knifed on the walk to school, hoping that they actually get something in their head during the time that they're at school, and hoping that, beyond hope, that will give them the possibility of either growing up and getting a job in that community that will pay well and so that they can rebuild their communities, or escaping that community and going somewhere where they can live a successful life. So I think that kind of thing is bound to resonate. As you pointed out, it would have been better if we'd heard that earlier. And whoever the speechwriter is now, it may be his son-in-law, he's getting good stuff. He's got at least the wisdom at this point to read off the teleprompter and say that good stuff. And so that can only bode well for him.
Well, it's funny you mention hope, Steve, because the thing that struck me even more than the pointed lines was in a campaign that just seems to be relentlessly negative. Hillary Clinton is always talking about, stronger together in our march into the grand socialist future and so on. But Donald Trump ended the speech.
It's a grand fascist future.
Get
with the program, Bill.
I was also very struck and impressed by the tone, the moral tone. That's exactly what Scott was referring to, of things that Donald Trump said in Michigan and things that I'd never really heard him say before. It was a pleasant kind of a sort of an upbeat tick in this last week of the election. So, Steve, let me just read a couple of these lines from Donald Trump's speech in Michigan to you. Trump said, "Stop believing in our failed politicians and start believing in each other." He said, "The future lies with the dreamers, not the critics, not the cynics." He called Hillary Clinton the candidate of yesterday, and we're the movement of the future. And perhaps most ironically and importantly, and perhaps effectively, He said, "We are now 8 days away from the change you've been waiting your entire life for."
Wow.
One of the great abilities in politics is to go in and steal the enemy's weapons, steal their thunder, steal their causes. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, there are, I guess, really four ways, four different kinds of votes that you can get. Let me see if I can remember all four. There are your base voters, which you've got to depend on and say the things that they want to hear and get them to actually vote. And then you've got people who lean your way, and you got to reach out a little further to get them to add to your total. And then you've got people who don't lean your way, and you've got to lean out even further to grab them. But the best kind of voter to get is the hardest one to get, and that's a voter from the other side's base. When you can peel off one of them, you're not just adding one more voter to your total, you're subtracting a voter from their total. It's a net gain of two. It's a powerful thing. Good messaging, going after your opponent's base, finding these wedge issues, obliterating 8 years of hope and change with that one line you just quoted is really good stuff. I hope it's not too little too late. But you know what? I was really spoiled growing up. I politically came of age during Ronald Reagan. It's the first campaign I followed closely. I was 11 years old and just watching the news, reading the newspaper every night for the first time in my life. And Reagan could inspire you by saying things that you hungered for, you thirsted for. About the moral rightness of liberty, about the moral rightness of capitalism, about the sunny optimistic message of real hope, the kind of hope that lets you pursue your own dreams, not hope that's dictated from Washington. And then I got so frustrated with both Bushes, not for what they said, but for the mangled, tortured phrases that would eventually come out of their mouths. And then even more disappointment with Mitt Romney, who you'd see was on the cusp of saying something Reagan-esque and would just whiff it because he wasn't that comfortable with it. He was the right guy, but he just didn't understand the messaging. And now we've got kind of the reverse situation. We have a guy, Trump, who's finally found his messaging, but he is such a flawed messenger that I worry that he's not going to be able to do that last thing he needs to do, which is to reach out with these great phrases and pull those voters over. I hope it works because he's got the messaging.
Well, our Members Only segment this week was about the power of momentum, how a football game can be at halftime with one team up by 4 or 5 touchdowns and end up losing, and the only explanation is that the players changed uniforms while they were in the locker room at halftime. The momentum is certainly with Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton continues to just continually degrade her ability to put this thing away. Several weeks ago, we were all optimists, but it just mathematically looked practically impossible. But the situation has changed quite a lot since then. When I saw Donald Trump in the third debate, I said aloud to my friends, "Where is this guy been hiding all the time?" He was much better than he was in the previous two, much more informed, much more disciplined, and I've seen him improving. When he put out his Gettysburg Address, I like that very much. I thought he was terrific in Grand Rapids. And so the question is going to be, is it going to be enough, and is it going to be in time? I saw that Pat Caddell, who was the pollster for, continuing to do polls for many, many years now, I've been on the same stage with him, he was apparently the pollster for the Jimmy Carter campaign in 1976. He said he saw something very much like this. The candidate from behind in the late polls, as Steve pointed out, Reagan was gaining the whole time, but the late rally by Reagan tipped people, the momentum of it, tipped people, and Pat Caddell talked about a bursting point when all of a sudden virtually all of the undecided voters left in the country just went in one direction, in the same direction. He said that's what it's looking like to him. Nobody knows. Ain't nobody don't know nothing, and we don't either. If Donald Trump wins 50 states, I will not be surprised. If Hillary Clinton wins 50 states, I will not be surprised. The only thing that would surprise me is something that doesn't surprise me, and everything surprises me this year.
2016,
so,
man.
In any event, whether it's enough in time, the Donald Trump that we're seeing out there now is a much better candidate and much better platform than the one we saw at the beginning of this procedure. And let's hope that this momentum continues to carry him across the finish line. As one of our viewers said, Donald Trump may not be the answer. He may just be a tourniquet. But at this point, with the bleeding that we're doing culturally and morally and economically and so on, I'll take it. On behalf of all of our members here at BillWhittle.com, I would like to thank them especially for keeping the lights on. Steve, Green, Scott, Ott, and I will be doing this on November 9th. And folks, no matter what happens, remember this. There will be a November 9th. The country will be in exactly the same position as it was on November 8th. We will have a lot of work to do if Hillary Clinton loses. If she wins. And that means we have a lot of work to do. We've beaten the Japanese, we've beaten the communists, we've beat the Nazis, we can beat these socialists. We just have to understand where the battlefield is. And one way or another, we're going to be on that battlefield on November 9th, and we'll be looking to see you there as well. For everybody here at BillWhittle.com, including Steve Green and Scott Ott, thank you very much for your membership. Thanks for watching, and especially thank you for your continued perseverance with us as we try to crack out some of these difficult issues in the most unusual, bizarre election of our lifetimes. We'll see you after the voting is done.